Greetings, salutations, guten tag. I am your host, Mike, and this is the Unapologetic Mic Check. This evening, we have my guest host, who is also my special guest, Shawnna L. Williams. How you been, Shawnna? Yeah?
Great. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me today.
All right. Those of you who don't know and probably don't, this is my lovely fiance, my rock of Gibraltar.
Aren't you sweet?
Yeah. So this this evening, what we're going to be talking about is diversity, equity, and inclusion. But before we get to that, um, I like to open up with a little witty banter.
Oh, do you?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
All right then.
Don't want to get into, DEI straight to it. You know what I mean? They probably gonna turn it off. Like, what the hell? But no. Again, shout out to INR Studios, my boy Rob B. Um, again, you know what I mean. If you want to come to a studio where you can basically virtually do anything your mind comes to, my man got an A studio, a B studio. He's got the soundboard here. Of course, I'm sitting here doing a podcast, so you can do your podcast. He got drums, guitar. He got all types of stuff. So,
Very cool.
yeah, if that's what you want to do, come on through. INR Studios. Um. Anyway, I'm really glad you're here.
Oh, I am too.
You're my first guest,
Aw.
so don't screw it up.
I will do my best. No promises.
Nah, I'm just playing with you. Nah, but for real, you want to ride home, you better not
Okay,
mess this
shut
up.
up.
Anyway, though, diversity and inclusion, it goes hand in hand with justice. Does it not? Would you say?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're going to talk about a broad range of things
Mm-hmm.
in the realm of diversity.
Okay.
Intersectionality,
All right.
um, women,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, people of color. I
Mm-hmm.
won't just say black.
Okay.
I ain't gonna do that. I ain't gonna do that right now. I ain't gonna do that tonight.
Oh Lord.
I ain't gonna do it tonight.
Thanks for
But-
taking it easy on me then.
Yeah. I ain't gonna put you on the hot seat.
So inclusive today.
Bingo, there you go. See, I do it all, y'all. I do it all. I'm very understanding. But what are some of the issues with America and their problem with diversity today? What would you say are some of the key issues?
I'm like, where do I start?
Let me narrow it down for you.
I could speak probably more to diversity issues in the workplace
Right.
than I can for all America, because that's where my profession is, in the workplace. Diversity and inclusion in the workplace. Do you want me to go into that question, or should I define diversity, equity, and inclusion for you?
Yes, please do. Please, I know. I live with you, so I know. But
Yes.
but for the people out there who know about diversity, but they don't know the full scope of it, or the ignorant, people out there, or
Look at you.
the bigoted people out there who don't want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Just in case you a fan and you a bigot.
Bigots are welcome.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
So that kind of goes right into the definition of diversity, right? So diversity can be a collection of anything, right? We're going to talk about people because that's what we're talking about. Diversity is having different identities, having people with different experiences, backgrounds, etc., holding space. So if we're talking about in the workplace, diversity in the workplace is many different people, many different religions, backgrounds, race, gender identities, gender expression, sexual identities, etc. That's diversity. I would say inclusion is ensuring that they all feel included and valued in all the various aspects of an organization. So you can have diversity and you can not have inclusion, which is why most diverse people end up leaving because they're not included. They're not included in the higher ups or in decision making or anything like that.
Okay. All right. Um, so let's go into who do you think suffers the most from a lack of diversity in the workplace
In the
specifically?
workplace, I would say everyone suffers
Okay.
because when you don't have diversity and inclusion, you lose the possibility of greater innovation. The more people's perspectives that you have in the room, the better chance you're going to come out with a greater product. You want people that's going to challenge what you say.
Right.
You don't want to be in an echo chamber, essentially. You don't want to just hear people agreeing with you all the time. Like you want to be challenged because that's when, you come up with new ideas.
Okay. All right.
So everyone definitely suffers, but I will,
Now go ahead. Look, go ahead. That's why you're on here. Go ahead. Do your thing.
Obviously, there's some disparities in opportunities and advancements and all of that stuff with people of color more broadly. To be even more inclusive, I would say Black Indigenous people of color, aka BIPOC, which puts the Black and Indigenous before the people in color because typically when people say people of color, they use it like a blanket term to describe anyone who is not white. And that was like the basis for saying people of color in the first place. But as society progresses and has progressed, people use people of color to just avoid saying the word Black. And I think a lot of America has forgotten about Indigenous people, to be frank. So saying like BIPOC or Black Indigenous people of color is a little bit more inclusive. But for the sake of that being a mouthful for this podcast, I'm going to say people of color.
Right. Okay, so I have something here.
Oh gosh, a surprise!
Hey, look, you should
I
be
love surprises.
extremely proud of your boy. I did my research, and I'm kind of having a little bit of an issue here because Rob, I'm having a little bit of an issue bringing the bringing the John up to the other screen. Yeah, bear with me, y'all. Cause you said what? Oh, hold on. There we go. I figured out what I did. Hold on. I feel like I'm old. I feel like I'm a senior citizen right now, bro.
Aww. Well, your knees.
Hold on. Nope. We're not doing that though.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Dog, I don't. It's coming up. Anyway, you know what? I'm gonna just read from it. All right. I have something here that says, as of March 22nd of this year, based on Bloomberg Equity and Business Week, 37 out of 100 of the nation's biggest corporations were broken down in the area of its U.S. employee counts by gender and race, with 31 more claiming to provide info in the near future. Of those 37, only 4 had blacks in 10% of executive or management roles. Hispanics fell even further in that category. Here it says, so I'm looking, and the reason I wanted to do this is because I have a chart that I want to pull up. Yeah.
So fancy.
Yeah, there's a chart that I want to pull up. Look, I'm not trying to be no slouch here with this. You know what I mean? Hold on. Got it.
Got
All right.
him.
Got her. All right. So here we have this chart, and it says room for improvement for Black Hispanic representation. So as this chart is showing, in management roles, Black people make up 12.5%. In contrast to white counterparts
Yes.
making 60.1%. And
Did it
that's
surprise you to find this data?
Surprisingly, no, it did not. However, the number of some of the companies did.
Mm-hmm.
Like Target. Everybody loves Target. Everybody loves Target. And I don't want to, put us all into a bubble here, but black people love Target. We love Target.
And TJ Maxx.
Yo, we go in there and spend a whole check.
I'm like, everyone loves Target.
It's diverse. How much we blow bread in this joint, but 68.5% in management roles. MetLife is at, what's that? For professionals, that's 69. That's 70%.
Yeah.
That's healthcare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's life insurance, I think. Same
That's
sort of.
that's even worse.
Yeah.
Like you see what I'm saying? So 12.5% there. Then we go with the Hispanic population in contrast to the black counterparts. They're 18.5%. That's up 6% from where we're at. And then there's the Asian counterparts. They're at a lowly 5.8%. Now, if I could speak on that, though, I kind of feel like they ain't worried about that because they have a lot of businesses of their own. You know what I mean? Like, all over the country, there are areas where they can have their own communities, have their own business, basically have their own exchange of money. And their families are working there and it's like generational wealth. So,
Yeah.
I mean, however, with a country like America touting that they're the melting pot and equal opportunities, this is sad to look at.
Yep.
Because
Don't look at law firms.
You,
Don't look at law firm data.
oh, yeah, we ain't even going to
Don't
go
do
there.
it.
But the representation figures were often worse for women of color.
Yes.
So,
This is where we talk about intersectionality.
Yo, how did Jim Carrey say in The Mask? Hold on to your lug nuts. It's about to be a hell of a ride. So, lagging behind on representation for women of color. 30.5% of the U.S. population, white women are in management, professional, and other worker roles. And then there are black women.
Bruh.
6.5%.
Bruh.
I'm going to do it again.
Bruh.
9.1% for Hispanic women. And then, per usual, Asian women.
Bruh. Bruh.
3%. That's like no one. That's literally like no one. It's
Pretty terrible.
that is bad. That's bad. How?
I'm gonna say, do you have a question for me?
Yeah, because we're going to touch on intersectionality. So, as a woman of color in a corporation, mind you, diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinator at that. Intersectionality is probably huge.
So, yes.
The topic.
The topic of intersectionality is huge. It's really close to home. It's something that I try to incorporate into everything. I like to approach diversity, equity, and inclusion within an organization with an intersectional lens. So we'll take a step back. I'll explain what intersectionality is. Mm-hmm. So the term intersectionality was coined by Kimberly Crenshaw back in the 1980s.
Hey.
And she's a black woman. And the theory Sorry. But I'm like, where am I going with this?
One
The
eternity later.
Shut up. Stop. Don't do that. You're getting on my nerves already. I knew it was going to happen, but it's like quite sooner than expected. So it's the theory that someone can experience multiple forms of oppression depending on their multi-layers of identity. So for someone like Kimberly Crenshaw, she was experiencing racism from white people in general. And then as a woman, she was experiencing misogyny. And if she were a lesbian, she would be experiencing homophobia. And if she was disabled, she would be experiencing ableism. So all of these things can converge in a nexus to create this like ultimate super duper hardship.
Like the perfect storm of
storm,
bullshit. Yeah.
Right? So black women in particular are, and especially if you consider like, disability and, sexual identity, they can be left behind. And those numbers that you showed are proof of that. I didn't see like disability or sexual identity on the chart, but it kind of speaks to the challenges that you'll have throughout life in and outside of work, because bias is a thing. Everyone has bias without even recognizing, depending on your experiences, how you're raised, etc. Implicit, yes, implicit, unconscious, etc. And that it just impacts the way that you can move through life. And those with privilege, which, Michael, you hear me talk about privilege a lot too.
That's a big thing.
And everyone has a certain amount of privilege. However, white privilege is different, and it's not something that a white person should feel bad about. It's not their fault they were born white, but they have the added benefit of having white skin and being able to move in and out of places. And if you also add on, if they were born into wealth, if their parents were college educated, you can, the same way
geographic location,
the same way that intersectionality can pile on the oppression, the same way that privilege can do the same thing. So it's just really important to just recognize that there are certain disparities that exist in a society that no one living today actually created. It was already there when we were born. But that's why there's such a thing as called being anti-racist. You have to do that. You can't, if you just sit there and you're complicit with everything that's going on, you're a part of the problem now. Now you are a part of the problem and a part of the society, willingly ignorant to all that is, crappy about it.
Right.
But, at least, if you're anti-racist, meaning if you do the work to educate yourself, educate your peers, once you know better, you start doing better, you start thinking harder about the decisions that you're making, the friendships that you're creating, and the spaces that you're holding, and for who, with who, et cetera,
Yeah.
The world would be a much better place if all the CEOs represented on that chart
Right.
could adopt that, it does take real work, which is why people fail at true diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right, because there's so many different variables that people put into being diverse, variables that shouldn't even be there to begin with. It's not rocket science. Mm-hmm. If you have on the thing when you post your job opening for a position.
I like that statement at the bottom.
That EEO equal
EEOC.
Yeah, EEOC. Mm-hmm. If you have that there, then it shouldn't be a problem for you to have somebody of color or a woman or a disability, or it shouldn't be a problem for you to promote them, especially when companies like to promote from within.
So, yeah, you would think that it wouldn't be a problem, right? But like I said, bias is a tricky thing. Number one, when someone is presented with the fact that they have bias, you'd be surprised. Like, you would think that you just called them an outright racist. Like, you would have thought that you would accuse them of something like terrible. Like, and they immediately take offense. Like, when you're dealing with diversity, equity, inclusion, and bias and privilege and intersectionality, like, you are combating, like, it's like psychology too, that you have to be aware of how people are going to be receptive or not. So I say all that to say it's like really hard for people to recognize their own, and therefore hard to intentionally uplift other people who are left out. Unintentionally they're left out, but there's still no, it's without intention of including them, it's a tricky thing. Like, it's not as easy as people think it is. What is easy though is listening, like, to like a conversation like this, and realizing like, oh shit, like I could be doing better, and then you can make those daily decisions and daily steps. So one thing I will say about like hiring, one thing people suggest to do, like some D&I experts say to do, is to like adopt blind resumes. So, because they're trying to mitigate the bias factor, right? Because if you see somebody's name, if it sounds black, somebody's unconscious implicit bias might take over without them knowing, and they might, side with someone else whose name is like Amy Smith or something, because that name sounds normal, right?
And and that's why some black people will name their child a name to where it could get looked at like, boom, like, my name? Yeah, look at the resume. I'm like, Michael Regan. Yeah, it sounds like a upstanding gent.
Right.
It's crazy how that plays a part in how black people have had to develop something to like kind of coerce diversity, without actually like saying, boom, here I am, this is who I am, this is what I am.
Right. It's very hard for black people to feel authentic in their workspace.
And they've had to develop a code switch.
I knew you were going to say that.
You should have known it was coming.
Are you going to sing the song now?
It's called code switching. Matter of fact.
Oh, God.
Matter of fact.
Why don't you look for that? I have a point.
Yeah,
I have a point to make.
Yeah.
Back to the like black women intersectionality, and now we're tying it into feeling authentic and being authentic in the workplace. Like, from a personal experience, and all my friends, all my black women friends can attest to this too. Like, wanting to change your hairstyle is like the most nerve-wracking decision black women can make in the workplace, because even it starts in school, depending on what school you've gone to, right? Like, if you've gone to a majority white school, or even like a more diverse school where they have many different other folks there, you might get teased if your hair is like in braids one day and now you got a pixie cut, now you got long hair, now you got this, now you got that. Doing it in the workplace, it's, we still do it because we're fabulous, but it's like, it's still challenging, even if we want to wear our natural hair, like, we're concerned that it's not professional. There are actually policies in schools and written in employer handbooks about professionalism, and by who, and also segue, like, by whose standards are you being professional, right? Like, who's deciding what is professional and what is not? And we all know the answer to that question, right? So it dates back to school, and like I said, like, certain policies are written in these handbooks now, and not now, but they've always been there. But it's purposefully placed so that when you show up to the workplace, like, you are there to assimilate into their culture. And sometimes companies use the word culture and culture fit to make it seem like, okay, you have to be this way. Mm-hmm. So then they start talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, and saying they want diversity, but they're hiring for diversity, they're retaining for assimilation, and then black people and others who don't fit into their culture box, they suffer. And like, many different ways. Like one, they stop being engaged, they stop putting their best foot forward, then they get reprimanded for that,
Right.
and then then it's like a negative cycle, and then suddenly they're fired, and it's all their fault.
And yeah, and it's very cyclical.
And obviously, like there are different nuances to each and every situation, but that's putting broad strokes over it. Like that is one of the one of the systems that we are combating against, where we're trying to be anti this. So an example of being anti-racist in that aspect is examine your company handbook. Like if it says a woman can't wear natural hair or braids, like take that out. That's not gonna affect someone's work ethic.
Yeah, like what you put, like what was it? Like, what's the point of putting some dumb shit like that in an employee handbook? It's almost like it makes me feel like they put it there for those black people who really want to just do the work, love their job, like fill the whole company out. Oh well, I got something for your ass. Go ahead and read this. It's almost like it's almost like it's like a pseudo know your place.
Yeah.
They put in that book, know your
It's
place, boy.
but
Like
I mean,
it's just, and it makes us do things like this.
okay.
Like it makes us do shit like this. It's that has been developed by us because of a lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy how something that should be so simple has created that. Just code switching alone has caused so much divisiveness.
Within our community?
Yes, because you'll have some people like that right there. You'll
Right.
have those interactions, and both of you can have the same opinion about black injustice, but it goes so much deeper than just us fighting for black injustice. Like, we're fighting for equality because this is the type of shit that happens. Like, it causes us to, we may not be fighting each other or killing each other, but something as simple as code switching. My sister and I had a discussion about code switching at work. And her fiance, as she calls him, he was like, man, look, nah, fuck that. I ain't code switching for nobody. I'm gonna talk how I want to talk. And she checked him real quick. She was like, no, I've seen you talk in certain different settings. You code switch. And I was like, yo, like, I hate to bust your bubble. Like, yeah, we code switch. Like, even the hoodest of people will code switch. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
a cat who didn't graduate high school or anything like that, boy, code switch the minute he get around somebody that know anything about a hustler. Like, he'll code switch real quick if the person know about money.
Yeah, it's about survival.
It's about survival, adaptation. That's just something that, something like diversity and inclusion breeds. You know what I mean? I have a shirt that talks about how some of us get to reach for the bars and other gets to reach for the stars. It's not just about prison. It's about a blockade.
Barriers, yes.
Yeah, it's a barrier. Like, that's a multifaceted shirt. You got the brown hands holding on to the bars, and then you got some of them trying to reach outside of them, and then you have white hands reaching for the stars. And it's not just brown. It's not just black people. You got people who are light shades of brown, dark shades of brown.
So then we got colorism at play here.
All right there. And it causes so much disarray within, all these underprivileged communities, not just black people.
And I would say underprivileged too. Definitely under-resourced, underserved.
Yeah.
Because we also have to fight, people of color in general have to fight for like airtime, for representation. And then people complain that there's too much of a certain amount of representation. Just to bring it back to, I think you asked me a question about like what does like the lack of diversity, or who does the lack of diversity impact the most, or something like, I'm butchering the question. And I said everyone. And I hold that true, Because the overarching issue is, white supremacy, which it's not anti-white person. It's the ideas behind it. It infects every single race and culture, specifically speaking about America, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't do white people any good either, because like it's so complex. Like, I wish it was as easy as like, oh, just hire more black people and just like hire more and just do this and do that. Like, we're combating against like centuries of oppression and supremacy.
And they tried it with affirmative action. They tried it.
And affirmative action was the right move for that time.
Yeah, they tried it.
And then now some companies still utilize affirmative action. It just to get people through the door. But the piece that they were missing was the inclusion aspect. And also like the training, like tell people why this is a big deal to get more other people in the room, and also explaining to white people that have been there this whole time. And again, I'm going to take it back to white people not needing to feel bad that they have a privilege. Like, it's not their fault. However, you're at the table. If you see commentary about like diversity and inclusion and hiring more black people and hiring more Asian, Hispanic, etc., that doesn't mean you need to fear your spot. Like, it's about bringing more people to the table. Like, nothing is being taken away from anyone. Like, everyone benefits at the table. It's back to that thing I said about like diversity of thought, essentially. Like, you want other people's perspectives. It pushes you to work harder. It pushes you to breed more innovation. I mean, it truly benefits everybody. Like, it doesn't take away from anyone. And I feel like, I think I told you this, like, I have an issue with like scrolling through Facebook comments on like particular posts, and I really need to stop doing that. And I get mad and just like all these racist people on there, and I'm like, It's the same rhetoric. Like, everyone thinks that something is being taken away, essentially.
Yeah.
When they just need to share.
That's
Back
all.
to kindergarten.
Back to last episode. Adulting sucks. Like,
Yeah.
you got to deal with things like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's so complex because, like, marginalized communities and people, like folks who are underrepresented in the media and TV shows and in the workplace, like, there is anger there. Like, as a D&I professional, I have to constantly check in with myself. Like, okay, like, I know I have bias for sure based on my own experiences with racism and my own experiences as a D&I professional, moving through, trying to make sure I'm advocating for myself, getting promoted, knowing the biases and knowing everything that's up against me.
Bruh.
That's a lot of shit.
To still have to, like, I have to check in and, like, okay, all right, I shouldn't assume that person is more into data because they're Asian. Like, I shouldn't, like, I have to check in with my biases about other people, not just white folks, other communities too.
Yeah.
And then there's also like some anti-blackness going on in other people of color groups. We don't have enough time to go into that.
Right, because that's a whole
that's,
different.
That's a symptom of white supremacy too. It works to divide everybody. Sorry, I'm like rambling, but a lot could be said about this particular topic.
So, in closing, I got one more question.
Yes, I'll marry you.
Yeah, you already answered that.
Oh,
Go ahead and show him the ring. Anyway, back to business.
Okay.
Can anyone practice D&I, or does it have to be a professional?
Everyone can practice D&I. The D&I professional is there in an organization. It could be the HR person. It could be the talent engagement person or whoever. They're there to give you guidance and to help you on your self-education and self-reflection journey. They can give you the terms like bias and explain what that is. They can talk to you about intersectionality. They can talk to you about all these other big words that maybe you've never heard before, like microaggressions, etc. Then you do your own research. Then you educate other people. Like, the D&I person cannot do it by themselves. And I don't even know everything. I hate to call myself an expert because of that, because D&I is ever changing. It becomes more and more inclusive, more new and newer terms are coming out, and that's all for the sake of ensuring that more people are included and
being diverse.
Being diverse and bring them to the table and ensuring that, folks aren't being offended by outdated terms.
Right. It's a very yeah, complex.
It's complex.
That, folks, is another complex facet of adulthood.
Yes.
I know for myself, I'm definitely biased. Like,
Oh,
God,
so am I.
God, I am definitely biased. I say this, and it's something that I'm asking God to work on me with. Um, I've said before, it's like I've witnessed, I've witnessed how, you know, no diversity or lack of diversity rather, and biased racism have affected my own mom and how long she's been working. Even, with how, housing and everything else. And it's made me so callous
Yeah.
that I've said things out of my mouth like, yo, I was like, nah, don't get it twisted. I was like, oh nah, yeah, I got white friends of all creeds. I don't have just white friends who listen to rap music.
Right.
I don't have white friends who like to just,
Your white friends are diverse.
they're diverse or smoke a joint or anything like that. I have all types of white friends, but I said I've known them for like more than 3 years. Anything less than that, and that's rare. Anything less than that, I'm skeptical, and that's because of my own bias based on the experiences that I've had.
Yeah, that's
It's
understandable.
it's made me like, damn, you know, I want to teach my daughter not to be like, nah, I'm good. Even though I could be a curmudgeon ever all the
Love
time
that word.
and pretty defensive. Um, it's just something that people really need to take the time to. It's about self reflection too.
The main thing about this work is
yeah.
self-reflection, self-education.
Diversity. We need to be diverse, like you said, diverse thinking. We need to be diverse when we self reflect because that's really where it starts at.
It's like who did you offend unknowingly? Like
Right.
replay in your mind. Like don't just focus on like all the times where somebody may have called you the N-word or like that's an extreme. But like don't focus on don't focus on that time where you were denied that job and someone less qualified got promoted over you.
Man,
Like
listen,
don't just focus on those things, but also like I said before, like I recognize that I had some bias when I was assuming that someone who was Asian was like going to be more quiet and would want to do. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. And I think it's only because I'm involved in this work. It's only because I was doing all this like research on bias that I caught myself. And that's like the most important piece. Like you're never going to get rid of your bias, but you'll get better at catching yourself.
Yeah. I think, going forward with diversity and inclusion, we as African Americans in particular rather, excuse me, we we don't want to be diverse. Like when we're trying to build our own, it's like I can see how when we're
you don't want to bring other like people into
like
the fold.
we don't want to bring it into the fold, but it's not because we don't want them there.
It's because it's been co-opted.
It's been co-opted. We want our
Every
own.
time
That's
we've had
because
our
every
own,
time
it's
we've
been
had our
co-opted.
own, it's been co-opted. It's been made a trend. It's been taken from us and made millions,
Taken by the
billions.
government,
Yeah, like
by individuals.
It's been raised to the ground.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. Look, it's the lack of diversity for equal rights has caused us to be not diverse with trying to build and create together with people. It's caused so much division that myself, I'm like, yeah, you know what? Look, we don't even want what y'all want. We just want our own, and it's not good enough.
Right.
Y'all can't even let us have that. And what really pissed me off about it was when the riots were taking place last year. And they were like, well, how do you feel about them burning down black businesses? I said, ain't this a bitch? Now you're concerned about black businesses.
There wasn't a ton of concern prior.
Yeah, y'all wasn't spending not one red cent at a black business. But now to push the further
narrative,
the narrative and division, you're using our businesses being razed to the ground. And the reason that they were being burnt weren't for the reasons that Black Wall Street was burnt down.
No, two separate
types of things.
Completely separate. As was a bunch of other instances where, our property and, businesses and lives were destroyed. We should probably end on a happier note.
Oh, yeah, we're going to end on a happier note. We're going to end on a happier note. But, I mean, this is the unapologetic mic check after all.
That's true.
Though.
Okay.
So, the happier note may not be happy to everybody.
That's true. Yeah.
But, before we, it's like one more instance I had is when, they were talking about, it goes back to World War II. You want to talk about diversity, a lack of it? The Tuskegee Airmen, or how they had Japanese people in American internment camps, American concentration camps, because they were Japanese, had no ties to.
They were Japanese Americans at that point.
Yeah, no ties to what happened at Pearl Harbor, but
because they were rounding up people who even looked Japanese.
You see what I'm saying?
Dead wrong.
Like, you see, yeah. So they weren't diverse and inclusive then.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, they were kind of diverse in like their hatred for.
Yeah. So you see what I'm saying?
Different groups of people.
You know what I mean? Like, you could give them a little bit of credit. They were diverse a little bit.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Duh.
Just a little bit. But we still got a lot of work to do, man. And I just feel like
all of us do, and it's not just a problem for marginalized communities and Black people and people of color to solve. It's an everybody
thing
issue.
Because, like I said, there was like, only love and peace is going to end all this. I'm like, yo, I hate to be negative, Nathaniel.
It'll take a lot of love.
I said, but yo, that's impossible.
At least respect.
Because greed is the reason people aren't diverse. People are judgmental.
And laziness, I would say. If we're talking about the organizations and workplace stuff.
Yeah, like another caveat of being an adult. You have to deal with that. A lack of love. And with that, I want y'all to live your life full of love and love your life fully. Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of the Unapologetic Mic Check. Everybody give a round of applause to my co-host / special guest, Shawnna Williams, a.k.a. my boo thing. It's been very educational. It's been very helpful. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thanks for having me today.
I learned a few things that I didn't learn at home.
Really?
Yeah.
So I need to talk more.
Nah, we don't. Nah, we don't need to do that.
Diversity, equity, inclusion, bias.
We don't need to do that.
Intersectionality.
Nah. No, don't do that. But I want to give a shout out to Robbie. I appreciate you, family. Yes, and I want to shout out my daughter who
was very loud.
Yes, she wanted to. She wanted to make sure y'all knew she was here. She wanted y'all to know Mama Bear is here. So, shout out to my princess. Another reason that Daddy is doing this podcast is for her. I want her to be able to look back and understand. Daddy was informative, but at the same time, he was unapologetic for who he was, and that's what this podcast is. This is why we doing it. Mm-hmm. So in the future, whoever my guests are, just know they're going to be unapologetic too. Because we're not here to sugarcoat. That's another thing. That's another reason why some of the most important issues haven't been, touched on, because people are timid. They're they're scared to ruffle somebody's feathers. They're scared to get in good trouble.
Well.
But that's my time, y'all. Y'all have a good night, evening, day, morning, afternoon. Much love.